Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal Mars square or opposing Pluto. And I did do a conjunction between these two planets last night of recording for that. So if you're really interested in it, you can find out more information about this connection between these two planets by listening to that, even if it's not going to be exactly the same, because I have a feeling I'm not going to be talking as long for this as I did for that. I went on for like a half hour with that one. And a lot of times they will just combine online all of the aspects or some significant ones, and there isn't much distinction sometimes. In this case, I was able to find on Cafe Astrology the square in opposition separate. And so I'm using the information from that, but I also did check out a couple of other sites. I didn't think to, give them credit because I only glanced at them. So in any case, thank you to those people, whoever they are. But basically, these two aspects are going to produce somebody who is coming to life with probably some understanding of how life can be ugly, how life can be brutal, okay? Because Mars is the god of war, Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and specifically, both of these planets, by the way, are rulers of Scorpio and the eighth house. And the theme of that area of life is what lies beneath. And the reason this is so important and why it fascinates me, besides the fact that I have the sun in the eighth house in the sign of Sagittarius, is because I think I am attracted to the, it could be the seedy underbelly of things, but I'm attracted to what lies beneath the surface because it is deeper. So you are going to be a deeper person regardless of other factors in your life. You could be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that's just like really light and fluffy, some kind of a job or profession, and you would still find something deep about it. And this is because you may have even sometimes seen how people can behave one way in public and another in private. Pluto has a lot, and Scorpio, with both of these as their ruler, has a lot to do with the hidden, and this also goes into the shadow aspect of the self, which is a lack of integration between all the parts of your personality, usually due to trauma, which can, run the gamut from actual events that are very upsetting, surprising, upsetting, to even just like forms of abuse that are ongoing, like emotional, physical, sexual abuse. And sometimes, and when people do these kinds of bad things to other people, a lot of times they will not do it in front of others. So, abuse a lot of times takes place behind closed doors. And yet, in certain circumstances, let's say a parent is very prominent and you have to make them look good because they're a politician or they're a pastor of a church or a principal of a school or something, and you have to just put on a smiling face, the child of a celebrity, what have you. And you know that this person has two different sides to them. That can add to that sense that people aren't as they seem. And so this is these are hard angles, and because Mars and Pluto are difficult planets, I'm not going to say bad, but they are challenging to our lives, which can have good effects, actually. They can really spur us to action. And the square can spur us to action. The opposition needs more of the integration. It can make people feel this sense of maybe like sometimes feeling like victims when they with the square, there can be a frustration that they're not able to have power by acting. They may have like a sense of learned helplessness. Now, interestingly enough, Cafe Astrology was quite positive about these hard angles, which I've seen a lot more kind of dire things with this because, in fact, when I do personal readings, if I see this combination, I immediately think that the person has suffered at the hands of abuse, maybe even above and beyond what other people have dealt with. And I think this is true, especially with physical abuse, including sexual abuse. And the reason that physical abuse is so, they always say that emotional abuse can sometimes be worse than physical because it's so insidious. It's not something that you necessarily think is abuse. You might think, hey, that if it's happening when you're a child, that you are bad or that you are stupid or whatever they're saying. Physical abuse is a lot less easy to justify. But it can be life and death with that. And so it can be much more dangerous in a very literal sort of way. So the point being that there may be with this combination somebody who has actually been brutalized, the worst case scenario, and that leaves that person severely traumatized. And when you have a lot of trauma and you're growing up with people who probably had their own trauma, it's very hard to kind of like transcend that. The best way that the person starts to heal is to leave that environment and get to see other environments and to see that not everybody is psychotic or whatever you would describe somebody who does these kinds of things. That there are people who are able to handle their anger. They're able to express it without, raising their fists, that they don't have twisted sexual practices or, behaviors, that they're not sexually abusive. So, if you are a woman and you have this placement, you may have like a real issue with men, regardless of your sexual orientation. So, that even if you're a lesbian and you have this as a woman and you were, had some kind of violence at the hands of a man, you may still have a problem trusting men, even, being in their presence. So it's not just in the sexual arena that this can happen. And so the reason I'm saying this first and foremost is that if you find that your life is hard to navigate, don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to try to heal with the help of a professional, because sometimes it is something that is more on the severe side, and you don't want to just continue to suffer needlessly. Because I'm going to be talking about some things that can happen, and this can be as the result of abuse, actually. So it's not to like kind of, make you out to be a bad person, but just to make you realize, hey, this usually there's a reason why people act the way that they do, and sometimes it is because they've been abused. Also, another thing is in terms of how you can like release excess energy, because Mars can be very active, but when it forms a square, it can feel that sense of pent up frustration, is to do something in the area of drama or, some kind of a creative pursuit. that is allowing your feelings to be channeled into that pursuit, because you might have a great ability to be creative. And I always say there's a difference between drama and passion. You have to know the difference, because if you're trying to act out your passions in life, that means that you're doing things that make you happy and that you really feel connected to. But some people, they just create drama, and they think that it makes life seem so much more colorful. And really, it just adds to chaos, emotional chaos. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, so in terms of temper, because we have to, when we look at Mars angles or aspects, Mars can indicate your anger management skills. And if you have a hard angle to another planet, especially one like Pluto, it can be a bit much. And so this can be somebody with a hair trigger temper. But I will say that if you have it in, let's say you have this with Taurus, like your Mars is in Taurus and maybe Pluto is in Aquarius or something like that, fixed signs. I mean, it could be different combination of that. But Taurus, I'm just saying, I'm just using Taurus as an example, but Taurus has a tendency not to get angry right away. There's a patience with Taurus. Taurus is the bull, and they say if you wave the what do you call that scarf or whatever in front of the bull too many times, then the bull starts to charge. But sometimes somebody with an inner planet in Taurus, whether it be like the moon, which can also, be how your emotions are, or Mars, they might have like a lot of patience emotionally, and they're not reactive, but then they become, it's like they can't take it anymore. And that can be dangerous for a person, because if you don't express your anger in that moment in a healthy way, and you're internalizing it, it can be bad for the health, but it also can lead to a volcanic explosion. And, you don't want to have it go to that extreme, because then the person is just acting on all of their resentments instead of what they experienced initially, which was the cause of the initial type of problem. So, in doing that, you end up creating even more problems. So, the other thing that I think can happen, and they didn't really talk about this, but it just seems logical that it can be the other extreme. Because in one of the other websites that I was looking at, they were talking about, being assertive and being able to say yes, thank you, no, thank you. And I thought that was a good way of putting it. But it's like somebody who has an experience being a victim can have a situation where they have learned helplessness. So they go through life being very passive, and they're fearful. Because when they were young, anytime that they might have shown their displeasure with something or tried to get an adult to give them something, they were met with brutality or just, extreme negativity. And in those particular cases, somebody who's like that is going to have a hard time asserting themselves. And this will naturally lead to more, examples in life of not getting what you want. And then that makes the person feel like, oh, it's no use. I can't have what I want in life. And so they just kind of give up, or they feel maybe they become passive aggressive, and they try to do it in an indirect way to express their displeasure, to get what they want, maybe be manipulative in some way. Another thing that I have noticed in general with people who have problems with asserting themselves is the only time they can do so is when they get angry. And that is problematic because then you're in reactionary mode. People don't realize that sometimes the greatest way to express your anger and to get people to take you seriously is to be very, calm in your voice. That you're not screaming and yelling. A lot of times that just makes the person look foolish, immature, out of control. But, some people know that art of being able to get what they want when they should get what they want, I should add, by being very, just very like serious about it and very calm. It's like you mean business. So learning how to be positively assertive is important. Oh yeah, one thing when I was putting down these characteristics, I was thinking of people. I used to work retail, and and just observing other people. This just happened to me recently when I saw somebody at Whole Foods of all places, trying to, I don't know if it was return something or get checked out, but wanting like special treatment, having too many items in their cart or what have you, and just kind of like throwing their weight around. And so that is an example of somebody who is, has that kind of sense of, what's that term? Sense of entitlement, and they think that they're supposed to get whatever they want, whenever they want it. And yeah, that's narcissistic behavior. So that's an example of somebody who is, that Mars energy is using it in an improper way. They're trying to bully people to get what they want. And it didn't work for that person. And she wanted to call the manager, kind of Karens are going to Karen, right? But, I just said that because that's just a common meme these days. But I just felt like that was very inappropriate. But I have seen people who are trying to get something, and they and that isn't that, to tell you the truth, that's not a great example because that person didn't have the right to assert themselves. But people who maybe want something that is reasonable for them to have, but can't do so in a way that is going to yield positive results. Like they're just being too demanding in a very insulting kind of way, a hostile, bullying kind of a way. So being able to see how that you might do that, because one of the things that they said here is that you may have an intimidating presence to other people, and you may not even realize that. And it's important to kind of take stock in yourself. So let me see what else I wanted to tell you here. You tend to have an extreme personality, all or nothing. So when you're done with something or someone, you're done. But that's like an important thing to note, is that this can be a placement for somebody who gets incredibly infatuated with another person. So your sexual aura is, very high. You may be a very sexual person, although for some people that have had trauma, this may be a blockage, I would think. This is not necessarily going to be true of everybody. But as I was talking about with somebody with the conjunction, this can be something where sex becomes a commodity. And that has to be really looked at because that's a form of manipulation, whether you know it or not. Now, if you're talking about like actual dollars and cents, that may be a different story. I was talking about somebody who's a sex worker with the conjunction, and they are taking trauma that was done to them, and they're becoming self-empowered. And in some cases, they know exactly what happened to them, and they've made peace with it. They're not acting unconsciously doing what they're doing. they just maybe they realize that there's some reason why that had to happen to them, and they're turning it into a healing thing, like a Chiron influence in the eighth house. That could be the same thing, like becoming a sex therapist, becoming a prostitute. I mean, a prostitute. The word prostitute, we say sex worker because it's more politically correct, but people are so like reactionary about prostitutes. And there may be times when prostitution is very healing for another person. Maybe a lonely man, that is his lifeline to another person. He's very inhibited, or other reasons why he doesn't feel that he can meet somebody. Maybe he's disabled. So these judgments are so strange, but to me, because I think that, I guess it's because there's still that shame that's attached to sex. But even if you're in a relationship, if you're married or, in a serious relationship with somebody, and I'm saying this especially to women, because women, I think, have a tendency to do this. Okay, I'll give you sex if you do this for me. And while I do feel that if somebody is not doing certain things, and I think more on the emotional level, that's going to turn off a woman sometimes, because she's not going to feel like connected to that person. She's going to feel resentful. But, sometimes it's taken too far. And, sex is used as a way to keep somebody on the line. And it's supposed to be an expression between two people. It's not supposed to be a bargaining chip. So being able to see if you're using it to control another person, because Pluto is about control. Now, it's so funny that Pluto is also about sex, and Mars can be your sex drive too. So Mars can have a sexual connotation or connection too. On the plus side, you can be very good in a time of crisis. So this may even figure into the type of work you're doing. You might be the kind of person who wants to be an EMT, like they used to call it. I was going to say like an ambulance driver. I can't think of it. When you work with paramedic. I thought that was a good term because it was like in the medical field. But yeah, like an EMT, emergency medical technician, or whatever they call it. They were saying with the conjunction about being a firefighter. I think that with the square and the opposition, there can be some hurdles that you have to kind of go over in order to make it happen, though. So in other words, it may not be a situation where you're able to just easily, make something happen. So by being able to see what has happened to you and use it in a way where you're not re-traumatizing yourself, but you're actually taking what you have learned from being in very like extreme situations and helping others, can be like so healing for other people. Because in actuality, I think that the person who is a therapist or whatever kind of a healer, it could be even be like an energy healer, is able to heal the most if they have been through that situation. But I will use the caveat that that person has to be integrated. They can't be trying to heal from a fragmented point of view, or they will, inevitably project onto their client their unhealed aspects. So there has to be that sense that you're already healed to a large degree. Another thing that they mentioned is that you might attract angry people to you. And they said that about you being provocative, which I thought was slightly contradictory, because I really kind of didn't like that, because I do feel if somebody's been traumatized, and been the victim of violence, for instance, that to say, well, you attracted that to you is almost like blaming the victim. But what I will say is that I do believe that people tend to either identify with their abuser and become an abuser themselves. They identify with themselves as a victim, and so they tend to unconsciously seek out situations where they are with people that are dominating them and abusing them in one way or the other, or they heal it and they might find themselves attracted to a very strong personality, but they're able to leave that situation and then learn from it. So even if you don't identify as a victim, it doesn't mean that you won't attract a victim necessarily, just because sometimes victims are good at hiding abusers are good at hiding it. And the more that you are aware of people, and you're really good at psychological analysis, so this can be something you learn very quickly as you mature, that you're able to see the red flags and you can be turned off to that. Because I think sometimes when somebody's bonded to their trauma, this can feel like so familiar to be in that situation that it's almost a source of attraction. And so I would call it like a masochistic tendency. And that it's almost like getting off on that, almost like S&M, where you get off on being whipped and beaten. And by the way, this is me totally and completely injecting my opinion into this, because they did mention, not specifically in what I just read today, but I've seen with this combination, maybe even with the conjunction. It was with the Venus Pluto aspects, where they were talking about S&M in the sexual orientation or practices. And I just want to say that, I was hearing people talking about, that's okay as long as they're two consenting adults. And I'm starting to say, no, just because experts are saying this doesn't mean that this is like, etched in stone as the truth. I feel that if somebody has been abused in their life and somehow it got sexualized, spanking, something got sexualized there, mixed up, and the person had that sexual imprinting, and then they that's like a fetish or something like that for them. I feel like that they're coming from that trauma and making it into a thing. Now, yeah, maybe sometimes they're fully and completely aware of that and it just is something that they do. But sometimes they become really, really involved with it. And I feel like it's that they're identifying with it. Now, if you become a dominatrix, and just like I said with the hooker, and you are totally aware of what has transpired in your life, and you are not, and you have maybe begun the forgiveness process, maybe you can do this type of thing and it's not going to re-traumatize you or traumatize somebody else. But I'm just putting it out there because the way that they characterize it is, oh yeah, if it's two consenting adults, but people consent to bad things all the time. Doesn't mean that it's a good behavior just because you consent to it, or that it's a-okay. It just means that, they don't see it as anything that's harmful. So, we have to be very conscious of what we're doing in order to have the best outcome, obviously. Now, I just wanted to differentiate between the square and the opposition. It's so funny. Typical for me, I've gone almost a half hour here. And I'm not clueless enough to think that everybody listens for the whole half hour. I know otherwise from my analytics, but it is what it is. People click on, people click off. I do the same. So anyway, The square is going to be a frustration. It can feel like the person is being thwarted. You can't feel powerful. You might feel that somebody's always trying to dominate you, and it might trigger that anger because of it. With the square, a person can lash out because of that sense of frustration, or they can just sit there and feel like their hands are tied. Um, Also, with the square, this can be a situation where you just feel that life is happening to you. Yeah, well, that's kind of like what I was saying about the victim mentality and things like that. And I guess basically, the difference between that and the opposition is that the opposition, the person can actively project onto others, maybe their own anger, maybe their own past. And in those cases, they're blaming other people. You're doing this. And they don't own maybe you don't own your own anger and you're ashamed of it. And so you're trying to, say, okay, this person did this. And perhaps that is, attracting that kind of an angry partner who can express the anger that you're afraid to. Unfortunately, sometimes they may express it onto you. So with the opposition, there may be less self awareness. With the square, there may be awareness of what is going on, but a frustration on how to deal with it because the person may still be in reactionary mode. So, because these are both hard angles, the person isn't interacting with the way that these two planets are cooperating is not very conducive to actual integration of what these things represent. Now, these are challenging in their own right. So obviously, it's not like even with the conjunctions can be neutral, but they can also be more challenging. And apparently, the Mars conjunction with Pluto is considered more challenging, I presume, because both of the planets are considered challenging. But, at the end of the day, especially the square is supposed to be a perfect example of something where you feel that frustration and it causes you to take action. In Law of Attraction, Abraham Hicks talks about shooting off rockets of desire. So, you see contrast in life. You see things that you don't want, and in order to make something happen, you have to do something that's going to get you the desired result. In this case, you may have to tone it down. You may have to look at how you come across to others. You may have to get therapy in some cases. You may have to forgive. And therapy, I'm not somebody who tells people what to do. I really think that if it's therapy, it has to be talk therapy. It has to be where somebody is really going back and forth with you and kind of like listening to your story and giving you ideas on how to act in ways that are more conducive with your goal attainment. And that includes relationships because, you may have drama in relationships if you're not careful from these unresolved issues. So that's how you have to heal, and you have to be an active agent in your healing. But I feel like I said before, this can make for a great healer because you've been through the ringer, and so you know the drill. You're not just reading something in a textbook, you actually lived it. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful in getting you to think differently. And if you would like to explore it deeper with me, the rest of your chart, please click on the link below. I am doing a deep dive double reading for 2021 transits for the whole year, an hour, and natal chart interpretation for an hour for a special price. I will link that below if I remember. Have a great, I was going to say, have a great month, have a great year, have a great life, really. Take care. Bye.